Hi and welcome. So in this video, I will show you how I modified my Noga Mini Cool from a mist or cloud sprayer to a large droplet coolant sprayer. As usual, the drawings are available in the links below. So on to how the Noga Mini Cool works. Don't worry, this won't be a deep physics lesson or anything, but I will give you enough information to understand how it works and give you the base of understanding that will help you fix it if something goes wrong. So the Noga Mini Cool was designed to take advantage of the Bernoulli Principle. And the Bernoulli Principle is very simple. It's a law in fluid dynamics that says that as a fluid moves faster, the pressure drops. And as a fluid moves slower, the pressure increases. Now you're saying, how does that apply here? Well, air also acts like a fluid. So the laws of fluid dynamics can apply to air as well. I'm sure on some limited level. I am not an expert on fluid dynamics. So basically what happens is high pressure air enters a tube. It is neck down, which causes the speed to increase. As the speed increases, the pressure drops. So as the pressure drops, the pressure in this column drops. This reservoir of coolant is open to the outside atmosphere, which is at standard atmospheric pressure for whatever your altitude is. Since the pressure here is lower than the pressure in the atmosphere will actually push the liquid up the tube into a very fine hole at the top, and the fluid will enter the airflow. Now, since the airflow is high pressure air and moving at a high velocity, the fluid will get atomized. And the output of the Noga Mini Cool is a wonderful fog of coolant. And the only thing wrong with that for me is that that fog will go everywhere. My lungs, all the equipment in my shop, my clothes dryer and washer are out here, and my wife's clothes that she hangs dry are out here sometimes. So the fog will land on all of those things, not a good thing. So I need to change the way this works. But first, let's look at how the velocity changes, because you may be wondering, why does simply necking down an airflow cause the velocity increase? And it's actually pretty straightforward. So if you look at individual volumes of air, if we just take some imaginary volumes of air going through this pipe, then if you look at any point in time, this volume air, first of all, the system will reach steady state. You apply pressure to it, air will come out the other side. Now it's reached steady state, and the velocity of the air through the system, overall, the amount of air traveling through the system will become constant. It'll all reach equilibrium and everything will balance out. Well, if I looked in the large tube at any point in time, any place along the tube, and measured the volume of air passing it per second, look at each one of these as a volume of air, I could get that value. Now you can see that when I neck down to a smaller diameter, that same volume is going to be in a much larger section of tube, and if it's passing per second, then obviously it has to speed up to get that same volume through the smaller diameter tube every second. That causes it to speed up. Okay, so now what I did to change the design. Ordinarily, like I was saying, your reservoir, actually the Noga just has a hose that has a filter end on it that you would stick in a container of coolant. If you had a reservoir, it would need to be open to the atmosphere, because if you closed it off, even though the pressure gets low here, it would start to create a vacuum above the liquid, and you wouldn't be able to suck any liquid out. So since it's open to the atmosphere, as the fluid goes by, as the air goes by at high velocity, the pressure goes down, the atmosphere pushes the fluid up the pipe. Now what I want to do is, I want to be able to slow the velocity of this airstream down. If you do that, the Bernoulli principle won't actually work anymore, because this pressure differential won't be enough to actually push the liquid up the tube. So I have to compensate for that. So what I do is I close this off to the atmosphere, put a low pressure regulator on it, and apply a very low pressure, say 5 to 10 pounds per square inch, into this container. That will force the liquid up into the airstream. Now I can use a much lower pressure airstream, which in turn will mean a much lower velocity airstream, which means now the droplet size will start to increase. Eventually it comes out just as a stream. So I now have full control over this output, and I can control the droplet size much better and make them so big that they won't stay suspended in the air for very long, which is exactly what I want. All right, so let's hop over the workbench and see which parts I needed to make this work. So here's my system as it stands. I still need to build a bracket to hold the filter housing. Starts with the Noga itself. The Noga has a mag mount that they're famous for, and a mag mount base, and it has a control for the air volume going through the unit, and the end of each hose or hoses has a adjustment that lets you control the amount of coolant that comes out the end. It has two hoses going into it. One hose is the air volume hose right here, and the other one is the coolant hose. So my design is based on this Whirlpool whole house filter. It is a WHKF-DWH that I bought at home at Lowe's. The filter housing was good for a reason, which I'll make clear in a moment. But just looking at the top of the unit, the airflow goes in through I bought a large hose and cut it shorter and bought these barbed adapters. So everything here is quarter NPT adapters. The airflow comes in this side and goes immediately to a T. Half of it goes out the other side through an elbow to the air inlet for the Noga itself. The other side goes into a Harbor Freight regulator. I needed a regulator in short notice to build this, and they were close and local, and it seems to work all right. The output of the regulator required a 1/4 inch NPT male-to-male adapter, and then the filter housing itself is 3/4 NPT in and out. So I had to get reducers to match the rest of the system, which on both sides involve I used PVC because it's cheaper, 3/4 inch to 1/2 inch NPT adapter, which goes to a brass 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch NPT adapter on each side. The output side, where the fluid comes out, has a 1/2 inch NPT to barb, which is a 3/8 inch inner diameter tube barb, and I cut the barb off in the lathe and faced it flat, and then I drilled through with a number O letter drill, which was a good press fit for the end of the Noga. So the end of the Noga had this brass fitting, which was press fit into a spring that had some sort of felt inside as a filter. And I removed the spring and then press fit this into the end. And you can remember that this is only about 510 PSI over here, but I tested it and it works at much higher PSI because it's a pretty good press fit. Then inside the filter housing itself is where one of the places I got really lucky, and that is because this center part where the fluid leaves, even in the filter design where it leaves, it happened to be the right diameter for 1/2 inch NPT threads. So I bought this 1/2 inch NPT to 1/4 inch quick connect adapter at Lowe's, and bought a small bit of 1/4 inch tubing and just set it in the bottom, and it works great. And that's pretty much it. Let's go see it work in action. Oh, and one more thing before we go to the practical evaluation. The O-rings in this filter housing get lost easily, and while you're at Lowe's, if you decide to go with this filter housing model, WHKF-C8 replacement O-rings, I recommend you get a pack. They're like $3. They're easy to lose, and as you can see, it was falling out when I was taking it out. Here for you. So yeah, I definitely remember replacing that, getting that. Also, you might consider the larger clear housing, the whole house filter. It uses 1 inch adapters, so you're going to need even more reducers. But it's a larger volume. You can see through it, so you can see your fluid level, which is really nice. I wish I could have gotten one that was clear. And I don't know what the diameter of the outlet is. You might have to get a different adapter for that as well, or you might have to jerry-rig something for that. In any case, this one's a good choice. What I might do is drill a hole in the bottom and a hole in the top that'll fit in a 1/4 inch NPT to hose fitting, and get some clear hose from top to bottom so I can see my fluid level that way. Anyways, let's go on to the practical example. All right, so here is the Noga Cool in normal operation. So or mostly normal, because there's always a little bit of air leakage bypassing this regulator, which you can see by that bypass pressure valve. So it will be pushing fluid up there, but this is what it's going to normally look like. So you have high pressure air going at high velocity, dragging liquid up and creating a rather substantial, hard to see, amount of fog. So if I wanted to reduce the velocity of the air, if I wanted to reduce the velocity of the air by reducing its volume, I also get a lot less coolant. It just sort of spits out, and it's very hard to just get a little bit of coolant. So now let's try with my version, keeping the air volume per second restricted at a lower value. Let's add a little pressure over here. Like, say, 5 psi. Now you'll see I have a mini flood coolant system if I want. And if I increase the air, or if I restrict it a little more, I can get large volumes of liquid with large droplet size, as you'll see. Well, hopefully you can see. That does not remain in the air. And that's pretty much it. So now I have a more versatile system. Again, the only limitation might be the size of this tank being a little too small, and maybe you want to go with the larger tank size. Thanks. I hope this helps some of you out, and I hope to see you next time.